the case of Shanynthia Gardner. Shanynthia Gardner was born in the late 80s in Memphis, Tennessee, USA. Not much is known about her childhood except that she was the daughter of Eleanor Snodgrass, who lived in a cozy wooden house in Madison, Alabama. Shaninthia's childhood and youth passed as normally as any other girl of her time. Shanynthia was a young girl with curly brown hair, slim and beautiful. She was always surrounded by loyal friends and showed outstanding talent. Shanynthia was full of creative spirit, had a unique talent for songwriting and a passion for music. She expressed herself through singing and attracted the attention of the local people. In addition to singing, Shanynthia was fascinated by the world of fashion and photography. She had the ability to turn everyday moments into works of art in front of the camera. Despite her diverse interests, Shanynthia was a charitable woman who attended church regularly and took good care of her family. Everything in Shaninthia's life seemed to be preordained and promised a bright future. Shanynthia was 14 when she met Daryl Clayton through mutual friends. They quickly became friends and their relationship became more serious after graduating from high school, becoming an official couple. They spent a lot of time together and were considered serious and stable young people. However, their crime records had some questionable details. Both had minor crimes such as traffic violations and disorderly conduct on the street. In 2008, Daryl was charged with assaulting a woman, even though the act was unintentional. He faced severe punishment, but all charges were later dropped. Shanynthia and Daryl were not officially married but lived together. In 2008, they had a son named Dee. Shanynthia became a caring mother, taking care of not only her son but also Daryl's 2 children from a previous relationship. Daryl's mother, Sonia Clayton, considered Shanynthia a family member, not just her son's lover. However, their relationship did not last. Although the reason is unknown, they kept in touch after the breakup. For Daryl, Shanynthia was still a good wife and a caring mother. When her son Dee was only 2 years old, Shanynthia was involved in a small incident, possibly a parking ticket or a small argument. This was insignificant compared to what would happen in her future. Marrying Martin Gardner opened a new chapter in Shaninthia's life. This union brought joy and stability to her life. Shanynthia won Martin over with her kindness and love for her children, which was reflected in her gentleness and intelligence. Their love story developed rapidly. In September 2013, they decided to live together and moved into an apartment complex in southeast Shelby County. The wedding marked the beginning of a new phase in their lives. After the celebration, they had their first son, Talon, followed by baby Sia in 2014. Soon after, their 2 daughters Savi and Yazzie were born, bringing happiness to their family. In total, Martin and Shanynthia have 4 children together and 1 child from Shaninthia's previous relationship. As a young mother, her children have always been her #1 priority. She enjoys working part-time at a children's hospital and is actively involved in a fundraising organization to help children. It is her passion and purpose in life. On a normal Friday, July 1st, 2016, around noon, Shanynthia called her husband, Martin. Her voice was completely calm. She told him that she was going to take the children to the movies. There was no indication that something terrible was going to happen that day. At that moment, they were having a quiet conversation when a sudden and confusing event occurred. Shanynthia suddenly changed her attitude and took a kitchen knife into the living room. She attacked her 6-month-old daughter, Yazzie, leaving her defenseless and in a terrible situation. Yazzie's life was cut short abruptly by the person she loved and was closest to. Dee, the eldest child, was only 7 years old and witnessed this horrific scene. He was too young to understand what was happening, but he knew that he needed to act to save his younger brother and sister. Panicked and desperate, Dee ran out of the house. Shanynthia continued to hold the knife and chase her son. She rushed after Dee, but he screamed loudly, attracting the attention of the neighbors. Several neighbors heard his screams and rushed outside to see what was happening. They witnessed a horrifying scene that they could not forget in their minds. They realized that Dee was being chased, but Shanynthia stopped. However, the horror was not over yet. Shanynthia returned to the house, where Savi and Talon were waiting for her. Distraught, she went upstairs to the bedroom where the children were lying. Those were the last moments of their innocent lives. Meanwhile, those who witnessed the horrifying scene quickly called the emergency services, asking for help and rescuing Dee and his siblings. None of them could have imagined the tragic consequences that awaited this peaceful street. The sheriff arrived at the scene and witnessed a strange scene inside the house at 7449 Southern Hill Road. They found Shenanthea covered in blood and her 4 children lying motionless, lifeless. The scene left everyone in shock. Shenanthea sat there, holding her cell phone and slowly dialing her husband, Martin. Her voice was soft but cold as she confessed to killing her children. The tragedy that had happened in their lives was a horrific event that would forever be remembered in this quiet neighborhood. By the time the prosecutor's office and the special forces arrived at the scene, everything was over. There was only an eerie silence in the house that had once been home to the happy Gardner family. Blood and horror were everywhere. Investigators found a bloody knife and witnessed the horrific incident. Chaplains came to help and were shocked by what had happened. Professionals were also ready to assist Dee, who was suffering from a horror that required immediate intervention. Shenanthea was arrested and held without bail. Her trial was scheduled for July 5th. The horrific events unfolding in Shenanthea Gardner's life have left society unable to remain indifferent. Although she has been portrayed as a monster, Shenanthea is still a mother and partner who radiated love, care, and joy. Her co-worker, Michelle Jymond, defended Shenanthea on social media and spoke out about the injustice of the charges. Michelle also emphasized the importance of considering postpartum depression in cases like this. Dr. Joel Rissman, a psychiatrist at the University of Tennessee Medical Center, confirmed that infanticide by mothers is rare and often accompanied by mental illness. He also pointed to the lack of mental health funding in the state, which leaves many families without the support they need. Dr. Diane Barnes, an expert in postpartum psychology and health, explained the difference between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. She emphasized that the two conditions are completely different with different symptoms. In Shenanthea's case, Dr. Diane doubts that women with postpartum depression would commit such acts. Instead, she favors the possibility that Shenanthea suffered from psychosis. The investigation into Shenanthea Gardner's case has been fraught with difficulties. Her defense attorney, Craig Morton, chose not to comment on the case to the media in its early stages, saying it was too early to discuss it. On July 5, 2016, Shenanthea did not speak at her trial, appearing only via video. Judge Lambert questioned her, but Shenanthea did not respond. After the trial, she was taken to the Institute of Mental Health. Shenanthea's family members were present in court but declined to comment to reporters. Morton's attorney and prosecutor, Jennifer Nichols, planned to file a motion to preserve evidence in the case, including information gathered from social media. In January 2017, Shenanthea was formally charged with 4 counts of aggravated child abuse, aggravated murder with a weapon, aggravated child abuse, and child neglect. The mysterious and chilling investigation continues, leaving the community waiting for justice and answers to many unanswered questions. The hearing was attended by Shenanthea's family members on the day of the tragedy. Sonia, Daryl's mother, must have been devastated when she heard the news of the horrific tragedy. She rushed to the scene in a search for her nephew Dee. Sonia asserted that this action was completely unlike the Shenanthea she knew. Initially, she believed that something supernatural or demonic had caused the tragedy. However, as time passed and the initial shock subsided, Sonia began to consider possible reasons. She theorized that the couple may have been in the process of divorce. Shenanthea, fearful of raising 5 children on her own, may have made the terrifying decision to end it all. However, despite these speculations, Sonia found it hard to believe. To her, the Shenanthea she knew was not the person capable of such a terrible act. Dee's father did not believe Shenanthea was guilty. Although he was not the official guardian, he visited his son regularly after his separation from Shenanthea. However, the last time he saw his son was in November 2014. He noticed that Shenanthea was becoming more extreme in her actions and decisions. All attempts to contact his son failed, and he was banned from interfering in her life. Shaninthia's friends and family soon noticed a sudden change in her. She began to show unusual symptoms, from feeling irritable to deep anxiety, paranoia, and panic attacks. Her behavior became erratic and unpredictable, leading many to suspect that she was suffering from postpartum depression. The sudden change in Shaninthia's behavior shocked those around her. She had been a strong, dependable woman who had everything under control. But now, she seemed to have lost her temper, leaving many wondering what had happened. The first signs of trouble appeared in March 2015. Friends and family were puzzled. One day, Shanинthia left work early, picked up her 5 children, and drove off in an unknown direction. Her husband, Martin, thought his wife was just taking the children for a walk and relaxing in the park, as was her usual routine. However, after several hours, Martin was confused and decided to call the police. Shanинthia drove from Memphis to Corinth, 74 miles east, with her 5 children. She did not know anyone there and had no apparent reason for being there. She was later found in the emergency room at St. Francis Hospital, but police did not disclose any details. She had superficial cuts on her neck and wrists, possibly from a suicide attempt, but her children were too young to understand what was happening. After being brought home, Shanинthia began to act strangely. She told her husband Martin that someone had threatened their family, but did not provide any further information. This shocked Martin, who had never had any previous threats. When she was with family and friends, Shanинthia complained about her job and felt bad about it. She then began to say that some of her coworkers wanted to hurt her. Despite the unusual signs, Shanинthia did not exhibit abusive or violent behavior toward her children or others. The wait for trial was long and difficult, with significant delays due to multiple psychiatric evaluations of the defendant. In 2021, the final non-jury trial took place. The defense focused on Shaninthia's mental illness argument. The prosecutor acknowledged her mental condition but argued that the defendant still had the ability to distinguish right from wrong and was aware of the illegality of her actions. Ultimately, Shelby County Criminal Court Judge James rejected the defense. In December 2021, Shanинthia Gardner was found guilty on all charges against her. In February 2022, Shanинthia, 34, appeared in court to receive her sentence, with her husband Martin present. Judge James sentenced her to life in prison for each count of murder and 15 years for each count of child abuse and neglect. Shanинthia will only be eligible for parole after serving 51 years, including the 5 years she has already served before sentencing. She will be eligible for parole at age 80, about 46 years from now. After the hearing, the prosecutor expressed approval of the sentence, saying it satisfied Martin's desire for justice for his children. Martin also felt relieved to know that Shanинthia would no longer have the opportunity to harm any more children. An evening vigil was held at the family's apartment complex to remember the victims. Sonia stood among a crowd of neighbors, relatives, and police. Attendees held red and white candles, praying for the souls of the deceased. The Baptist minister said this was the first step in healing the community, and everyone could only support the surviving child and his father through this difficult time. Martin did not attend the memorial service because he was too sad. Sonia spoke to the press on his behalf. The leadership of the Children's Hospital where Shanинthia worked also sent condolences. Martin's colleagues set up a social media page to help him arrange the funeral for his 4 children. During the service, Martin spoke about his family and children in an emotional and noble way. His words showed admirable resilience. At the end of his speech, Martin emphasized that he would always remember the happy image of his family, with Shanинthia and the children by his side. This is a precious memory that he will cherish forever. This case takes us to the small New Mexico town of El Rancho. Home to just 1,500 people, it's a close-knit community full of honest and hardworking families where everyone knows everyone. In 2011, it was home to the well-respected and loved Ortiz family. Mom Dixie, Dad Lloyd, their daughters Sherry and Angela, and their son Stephen. Lloyd and Dixie had been married for 34 years and were described as pillars of the community. Angela said that Dixie and Lloyd were the best parents in so many ways. They never judged, always accepted people for who they were, worked harder than anyone she knew, and supported everyone else as well. Lloyd was a tile contractor. He was usually up before the sun rose and didn't often stop working until after 9 at night. Dixie worked in a nursing home, something she didn't see or describe as work. She just genuinely loved helping people. In 1989, when Angela and Sherry were teenagers, Dixie and Lloyd met 7-month-old Stephen and instantly fell in love with him. They soon adopted him, and his sisters said their family felt so perfect and complete. Stephen had cerebral palsy and his left side was paralyzed. The family were told that it was a tough road ahead. He may never be able to walk or talk and would need assistance with a lot of things in life. Through immense hard work both physically and mentally, lots of love and encouragement, Stephen overcame everything doctors said he never would. He was soon walking and talking, as well as reaching huge developmental milestones. The family would attend church, and Stephen was always the star of the show. His pastor said he would walk in and greet every single person there. He was a joy to be around, and everyone adored him. 2/3 of the Ortiz family home was occupied by Dixie, Lloyd and Stephen, and Sherry and her husband Jesse, and their 2 children lived in the other part of the home, which was separated by a fence. For the family that had always been so close, this was the perfect living arrangement. June 18, 2011. Sherry and Jesse spent some time at the casino before coming home and watching a film. Sometime in the early hours of the morning, Sherry and Jesse heard a noise outside and the dog started barking. Jesse got up, grabbed his gun, and looked outside. He saw a gray car driving away and heard someone shouting, "Hurry up! Let's go!" He got in his truck and followed the car for a while before losing it. He then drove back home and the family went to sleep, thinking although it was odd it was likely just teenagers messing around. Several hours later, June 19th, Father's Day. Sherry had made some enchiladas for her dad for Father's Day. She walked over to the house and let herself in. When investigators arrived on scene, they discovered Dixie in the master bedroom in her pajamas with trauma to her head. Lloyd was found in the backyard and had sustained 7 injuries to his head and torso. 21-year-old Stephen was dead on the kitchen floor. It was clear that he had tried hard to fight off his killer, but he was struck 17 times in total and succumbed to his injuries. The ferocity and level of rage that the perpetrator had was shocking to everyone there. One officer said it was the worst crime scene he had ever been called to. Everyone in the community was frightened and shaken. Things like this just didn't happen, and the fact that a family like the Ortizes had been subjected to this left everyone fearing that their families could be next. Lloyd's wallet was on the kitchen counter next to Stephen's body, but it was still full of money. So initially it seemed that robbery was not a motive. There was no DNA of an outsider inside the family home, and police knew they were up against it unless they could find the murder weapon. At the back of the property, behind a locked fence, were several marijuana plants. Angela and Sherry explained that their parents had a medical marijuana card for Stephen as well as a license to grow it for him. After 2 brain surgeries, Stephen had been prescribed it to ease his constant and very debilitating headaches. Authorities wondered if the wrong person had found the plants and broken in to try and steal them, rather than the money or valuables inside. But it soon came to light that Lloyd and Dixie had a secret safe hidden at the back of their closet. A safe so secret even their children didn't know about it. And this presented more motive still. The autopsy results soon came in. The wounds were so deep that everyone initially thought it was a gun at point-blank range. But the results later revealed that the family had been killed with a pickaxe. Sherry said when she and her husband had heard someone outside that early morning, Jesse had jumped into his truck and started following the car. But Jesse's first story contradicted this, and he told officers he only went and stood outside. He didn't follow anyone. He then changed his story and said he might have missed that part out. Officers definitely found this odd, as it was a pretty big thing to forget, and they wondered if Jesse had more to tell them. Jesse admitted that he and Lloyd had argued on occasion, but he said it was all over stupid and petty things, and they were forgotten as soon as they happened. Authorities couldn't rule anything out though. No matter how small something seemed, there could always be more to it. They searched Jesse and Sherry's part of the home. Nothing came back forensically, and the CCTV from the casino also lined up. With this, police were officially able to rule out Jesse and Sherry as playing any part in the deaths. Hoping the killer had just dumped the pickaxe somewhere near the home, authorities were looking everywhere for the murder weapon, and remarkably they found it, just a short distance away in a field near the Ortiz family home. It weighed 5 pounds and was still covered in blood. Praying this would be an open and shut case very soon, they sent it off for testing. But sadly, the only DNA that came back was from Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen. There was nothing else on it. Angela told the police that there was one person they might want to talk to, a 16-year-old called Nicholas Ortiz. There was no relation between him and the Ortiz family, but he was close with Sherry's son and the pair would hang out at school. He went to the same church as the family and his pastor said he was helpful, always staying late to tidy up and friendly. After frequent bouts of difficulty, volatility, and fighting at home, Sherry offered a room to him, hoping it would help and give him some stability. Nicholas would also spend time at Lloyd and Dixie's and they treated him well, often driving him around whenever he needed a lift and cooking him dinner. But this all changed when Sherry and Jesse noticed money was going missing, before walking in on Nicholas going through their things. Instead of asking him to leave, they saw it as a cry for help and decided to give him money for the contributions he was making around the home, hoping this would stop the stealing. But Nicholas's attitude got worse, and his behavior was making Lloyd and Dixie more and more uncomfortable. After finding him hiding in the garden after jumping over the fence, eventually Lloyd told him to leave the family alone and go back to his parents' house. Nicholas was found and questioned. He appeared honest and open about everything, including the tension between them all when he was asked to leave the house. As well as this, he said he was at home that night. He woke up his dad to wish him a happy Father's Day just after midnight and saw his mom off to work at 7 a.m. This was corroborated by the family and the police continued their searches. Time was slipping away fast, and before long it was almost Christmas 2012. The Ortiz family murders was among the state's most disturbing unsolved cases, and police were worrying that with no DNA evidence, it might remain a cold case forever. But one call would finally come in that changed everything. A woman currently serving time in prison told police she had information on what had happened to Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen. She told law enforcement that there was a reason for the lack of evidence. She actually knew the attacker, and he had been wearing socks over his hands at the time of the assault. This caller was 24-year-old Ashley Roybow. She had a string of convictions, including burglary and drugs-related charges. She claimed that on the night of the murders, she was smoking weed with her cousin Jose, who was 15 at the time, and his friend, none other than Nicholas Ortiz. Jose and Nicholas decided they needed more money, so they hatched a plan to steal from the Ortiz family. Nicholas was somehow aware of the safe in the family home and was out to steal $20,000 from it. As well as this, he said he wanted to steal the plants too. Ashley drove them to a road near the Ortiz family residence at around 3 a.m. She then drove home. Ashley said she was in a gray car, a car similar to the one Jesse said he had seen driving that early morning. 45 minutes later, at 3:45, she got a call from Jose. He said he had panicked last minute and couldn't go through with it. He could hear dogs barking and some families were still awake, and although Nicholas had tried to convince him, he refused. He watched as Nicholas walked up to the back door and knocked. Jose said he realized the gravity of the situation and ran and hid behind the house. After this, Nicholas called Ashley, telling her she needed to pick him up from outside the Ortiz's house. As soon as the pair got in the car, it was obvious that something horrific had happened. He had blood on his trousers, a sock on his right hand, and a bin bag tied around his right leg. He was in a panic, saying over and over, "I messed up. I killed them." Ashley said she drove him to her grandparents' house so he could take a shower. His bloody clothes were put in a bag and disposed of, and he was given new clothes to walk home in. The next day, Nicholas called Ashley, saying he killed the family with a pickaxe before discarding it outside the house. But officers did have questions. Not only did Nicholas appear to have an alibi, the car in question had been sold on and later crushed at a scrapyard. 18 months had now passed since Father's Day 2011, and the vehicle was long gone. They started looking into the only thing that had lasted over the years: phone records. Records showed a lot of communication going back and forth between the three of them that night in June 2011. They called in Nicholas again and asked him about the text messages. He quickly asked to stop the interview. Over the next few months, they continued building their case. And 3 years after the killings, 2014, officers turned their attention to Jose to get his side of the story. He told them the same story as Ashley. Eric Zubia, another one of Nicholas's friends, became the third person to tell the officers the same thing. He said Nicholas had said he had killed people but would not specify who. It was only when he heard about the Ortiz family that he thought he had connected the dots. He went straight to the police 2 days later, but the full story was still unknown, and although this was logged, it still took a long time to obtain an arrest warrant. But that day finally came on February 12, 2015. Nicholas Ortiz was placed under arrest with 5 charges against him. When he was read out the charges, he said, "I don't agree with 2 of them." The detective recalled it was very telling that the only 2 he didn't agree with had nothing to do with murder, and he said this was as close to a confession as he could get. Sherry, Jesse, and Angela were in a state of shock. The teenager they had taken in as their own, fed, given money to, and a bed to sleep in, had turned on them all in such an unimaginable way. He was initially denied bail, but this was changed to $100,000, which was made and he was let out. Both Ashley and Jose were set to testify against him in exchange for plea deals. Ashley pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit aggravated burglary and tampering with evidence and was given 20 years in prison with 6 years of her sentence suspended. So she will remain in prison for 14 years unless she gets parole any earlier. Jose was given full immunity and was never charged with any crimes. Although he was a minor at the time of the murders, given how disturbing the crime scene was, the district attorney fought for him to be tried as an adult, which allowed for them to push for a higher sentence if he was found guilty. To everyone's surprise, in the middle of the proceedings, Jose changed his testimony. He said that Ashley was the ringleader and she had instructed both him and Nicholas to rob the home and killed the family. He said she gave them socks to cover up their hands and plastic bags for their feet and gave Nicholas the pickaxe. Nicholas didn't take the stand the entire trial, leaving Ashley and Jose with opposite statements fighting against each other. After 3 days of deliberations, the jury was stuck. They hadn't reached a verdict on any counts and they simply couldn't agree. A mistrial was declared. Everyone thought that the case was as strong as it could possibly be, but it meant that a new trial would have to take place, leaving the family to go through it all again. The case went back to trial 17 months later, and this time there was a very different result. Nicholas Ortiz was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon. Sherry started a petition begging the judge to give Nicholas 3 consecutive life sentences. He got credit for time served since his first arrest and was required to serve 85% of his sentence. Nicholas filed an appeal, but it was denied. It's possible he could be out of prison in his early 40s, being able to apply for parole in late 2036 or early 2037. Angela said it was hard to feel like any closure had been gained and any justice had been served. The district attorney said while he was disappointed, he was happy that it had been categorized as a serious violent offense. The community of El Rancho and the family and friends of Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen will forever be affected by what happened back in June 2011. Sherry and Angela waited more than 8 years to get justice for them, but they are still left feeling that justice simply didn't happen. Hardworking, giving and doing everything they could for everyone they met. The deaths of Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz was and will always be a huge loss to the community and everyone that knew them. It is only right that they be remembered for the joy and happiness they brought to so many people and not by the tragic way that they left this earth. The case of Kira Stager. Kira Stager was born on November 19, 1982, in Des Plaines, Illinois. She was the daughter of Marcy and Jay Kira, who described her as a bubbly, dedicated, and sweet person. Kira worked at the Mall of America where she held positions at 2 stores, Wet Seal, and most recently Delia's. Her co-workers were not only her best friends, but also her family. She had a unique ability to see strengths in others that they had not yet seen. Kira had planned a bright and peaceful future. Unfortunately, Her dreams came to an abrupt end when Kira mysteriously disappeared. On Thursday, February 21st, 2013, Kira had a shift. Her coworkers said she was feeling well and had plans to go out to dinner at a fancy restaurant with her husband, Jeffrey Trevino, after work. Kira and Jeffrey met 3 years ago and quickly fell in love. Kira and Jeffrey began a romantic relationship and eventually married, forming a happy and stable couple. Although they sometimes disagreed, they resolved everything in private without letting anyone know about these disagreements. 2 days later, on Saturday, February 23rd, when Kira failed to show up for work, her coworkers became concerned because this was unlike her. Kira was always punctual, strict with herself and others, never late, and always kept to a schedule. When Kira could not be reached, her coworkers called Jeffrey, but he did not know where his wife was. Jeffrey said that Kira had left home the morning before and had not returned. He was not too worried because Kira had a habit of occasionally being absent for a day or two, often staying overnight at friends' relatives' houses without notice. However, the bad weather with heavy snow that day may have worried him. Jeffrey thought that something might have happened to her on the road. Perhaps her car broke down and her cell phone ran out of battery. That same day, not receiving any news from his wife, Jeffrey reported her missing and contacted Kira's family. Her family was shocked by the mysterious disappearance of their loved one, and this was a huge shock for them. After receiving the report of Kira Stager's disappearance, detectives immediately began investigating. Investigators began by questioning Jeffrey and searching the nearby area. Detectives went to Jeffrey's home to talk to him. Jeffrey said that on Thursday, he and Kira wanted to spend time together. They had dinner, talked, went bowling, and then left the mall. According to Jeffrey, they both went home soon after because Kira planned to watch it. Jeffrey also told the detectives that his wife had left the house the following morning, Friday, around 8:30. A meeting had been scheduled at work that she had to attend. Kira was acting normally, and Jeffrey did not notice anything unusual. Jeffrey did not find anything unusual about Kira's occasional disappearances, although he did not know where she went or who she was spending time with. Jeffrey said that they had been having relationship problems for the past few months. However, he did not find it serious or alarming, but rather viewed it as the usual small arguments that occur in every family. The detective asked Jeffrey about who Kira might be seeing and whether she was in any other relationship. Jeffrey dismissed this idea, as he had asked Kira directly and she had denied it. According to Jeffrey, he truly loved Kira and trusted her. Investigators turned over all the information they had gathered about Kira and her car to the patrol team. Detectives also went directly to the Mall of America to verify Jeffrey's statements and look for clues. The Mall of America, located in Bloomington, is one of the largest malls in the world, with 520 stores, an amusement park, an aquarium, a movie theater, a golf course, and many other amenities. The mall has numerous security cameras, so detectives reviewed the footage of Kira leaving the company on February 21st. The video did not show anything unusual. Jeffrey's initial statement was very credible. He met Kira after work. They stayed in the mall for a while, then went down to the parking lot and left. There was no argument, and the evening went smoothly. Waiting without knowing what had happened was difficult, and each passing day made Kira's family more and more worried about her safety. With no word from her, Kira's family traveled to Bloomington to help with the investigation. They printed flyers with Kira's picture on them, posted them on utility poles, and handed them out to passers-by. Their goal was to attract as much attention as possible to find Kira. They knew they couldn't just stand by and had to take action to find their loved one. While Kira's family was handing out flyers, the investigators continued their investigation. While interviewing neighbors, the police discovered a surveillance camera on a neighbor's home. The camera was pointed at Kira and Jeffrey's home. The investigators asked the homeowner to copy the footage from the camera because they hoped to find clues in it. Meanwhile, records from a cell phone company provided them with a new lead. According to phone records, Kira was in a relationship with someone other than Jeffrey. That person was Ryan Wendt, the manager of the chain of stores where she worked. They had a deep relationship and corresponded frequently. Police determined that Ryan had left the state and that when the search for Kira began, Ryan was driving to Colorado. This man was closely related to the investigation because, in addition to his relationship with Kira, he was out of state at the time of her disappearance. Could be a coincidence, or there could be something else going on behind his departure. Investigators needed answers. After several attempts, detectives were able to contact Ryan. He said the last time he had contact with Kira was when he was driving through South Dakota and texting her. These messages were sent shortly before Kira went missing. After reviewing the timestamps, detectives determined that Kira had contacted her new lover while she was having dinner with her husband. The messages showed that Kira had become increasingly distant from Jeffrey. Investigators ran a cell tower location check on Ryan's phone and checked his credit card statements. The results showed that he was indeed out of state that night and had no connection to Kira's disappearance. As a result, Ryan was released and cleared as a suspect. The timestamps on the messages showed that Kira was still texting Ryan even after she returned home to her husband. However, after 11:44 p.m., their conversation stopped and Kira's phone was no longer active. Meanwhile, another investigation team was preparing to review video from a surveillance camera installed at Kira's neighbor's home. The camera captured most of the street scene from left to right. However, it rotated so quickly that it was difficult to observe. If the camera saw something suspicious, it immediately moved in another direction. Jeffrey and Kira's house was only visible for a few seconds when the camera panned to the right. Jeffrey said that after dinner and bowling, he and Kira went home, watched a movie, and went to bed. However, when investigators reviewed the footage, they discovered that just after 2 a.m., Kira's car backed into the driveway. Because the footage was poor and the camera kept moving, it was difficult to determine exactly what was happening at that time. The car then left the house. Jeffrey explained that Kira had asked him to fill up her car with gas for work the next day, so he went to the gas station. Surprisingly, this story was true. He was seen at the gas station around 3:30 a.m. However, detectives discovered that after leaving the gas station, he headed toward the highway instead of home. It is unclear where Jeffrey went next. The neighbor's camera did not record him returning, but this may have been a coincidence since the camera was always moving. Therefore, in theory, Jeffrey could have gotten home later since the camera was capturing a different angle. When investigators reviewed the video, they saw Kira's Chevrolet leave at 9:21 a.m. Unfortunately, they couldn't determine who was driving. A missing person report was filed on Saturday, February 23rd, and on Monday, February 25th, police received a call about a suspicious car parked near the shopping center where Kira worked. There are 2 multi-story parking lots there. A security guard found the car parked for several days and asked for it to be towed. When the driver inspected the car before towing it, he noticed suspicious red stains on the trunk lid and immediately called the police. That car turned out to be Kira's white car. Although there wasn't much blood, just a few small stains, it was still very concerning. In the car, they found Kira's wallet and a divorce form downloaded from the internet. Additionally, a dark object in the snow behind the car caught the attention of the investigators. As they approached, they found a rolled-up trunk mat with dark stains. DNA testing confirmed that it was Kira Steger's blood. The investigators were devastated to realize that Kira was most likely dead. This heartbreaking news was a huge shock to her family and friends. Their last hope of seeing Kira again was dashed, leaving them with questions. How did she die? Was she in pain? Who could hate her enough to take her life? The fact that Kira's body had not been found added to the confusion, as the endless grief seemed unlikely to be alleviated. The detectives made it a top priority to find out who had left the car in the parking lot. The car left the house at 9:21 a.m. and about 20 minutes later, it was caught on a mall camera. There were no cameras in the parking lot where the car was found, but another camera recorded the road leading to the lot, which was located near where Kira's car was parked. After reviewing the camera footage, detectives found that a hooded man appeared a few minutes after Kira's white Chevrolet pulled into the lot. It was cold enough that it was not unusual for him to be wearing a hoodie, but detectives wanted to learn more about where he went. The hooded man was seen walking across the street and approaching a taxi stand. He briefly chatted with a driver, then got into a cab and drove away. Police were able to determine the company that owned the taxis in the mall parking lot. Based on the time he spent talking to the drivers, police were able to determine the license plate numbers. All of the taxis had GPS tracking devices, which showed that the man ended up about a block away from Kira and Jeffrey's house and left after paying in cash. As the taxi left the neighborhood, it was caught on camera, the same camera that had filmed part of Kira and Jeffrey's house. 2 minutes later, a man in a hoodie entered the frame. The low resolution of the video made it difficult to identify his face, but the white logo on his shirt was clearly visible. As investigators continued to examine the video, they saw the man enter Kira and Jeffrey's house. Kira was missing, leading to suspicions that the hooded man might be Jeffrey. After obtaining a search warrant, the police went to the house. At first, the house looked normal and unremarkable. However, upon closer inspection, forensic experts discovered dark red stains in Kira and Jeffrey's bedroom. There were several on the wall near the bed and about 100 on the mattress. It was clear that the bedroom had been rearranged and cleaned recently. When the forensic team sprayed luminol, the carpeting glowed. Were blood stains throughout the house that were not visible to the naked eye. The blood stains originated in the bedroom and extended to other areas of the house. Forensic testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Kira, leading investigators to believe that she was no longer alive. In addition to searching the house, police also searched Jeffrey's car. There were no blood stains or signs of a struggle. However, they found one interesting detail: a gas station receipt in Jeffrey's car, dated 1 hour and 40 minutes before Kira's car was abandoned in the mall parking lot. According to the receipt, the transaction was made using Jeffrey's card. Detectives went to the gas station to review the security cameras. The camera recorded Jeffrey filling up with gas, then going inside to withdraw money from an ATM. The video clearly showed Jeffrey's face and a logo on his jacket that looked similar to the logo on the man in the earlier footage. With video evidence and all the evidence in the house, Jeffrey Trevino, 39, was arrested. He was taken to the police station for questioning and is now the prime suspect. Immediately after being released from the interrogation room, Jeffrey contacted a lawyer and was advised to exercise his right to remain silent. The police had enough evidence to charge him, but the most compelling evidence was Kira's body. No one suspected Kira was dead at the time. Police, Kira's family, and volunteers searched for her for months. In late March, as the snow melted, a volunteer found a strange bag on the edge of Keller Lake a few miles from Jeffrey's house and called the police. The bag contained a bloody pillow, a shirt, and a bra. The forensic team linked these items to Kira because her DNA was found on them. The lake remained frozen, hampering the search. However, when divers surveyed the water, they found no remains. The area around the lake was searched several times with 4 cadaver dogs, trained to find dead bodies, but to no avail. 2.5 months after Kira's disappearance, on May 8, 2013, the St. Paul Police Department received a disturbing call. The caller reported that he had seen what appeared to be a body in the Mississippi River. Police discovered and recovered a body. The body was naked. Dental records identified it as Kira Stager. She had suffered severe trauma to the forehead and a broken left index finger. Because the body was so badly decomposed, the medical examiner was unable to determine the exact cause of death. Using new evidence, investigators attempted to reconstruct a timeline of the events leading up to Kira's death and the events that followed. They believed that when Kira and Jeffrey returned home, Jeffrey found her texting with someone else. When Kira refused to show her husband the messages, he snatched the phone from her and broke her fingers. After reading the romantic messages, Jeffrey became even angrier, and in a fit of rage, he killed Kira and tried to cover up the crime. He drove Kira's car to the house, put the body in the trunk, then went to the gas station before taking the body to the riverbank and dumping it. He then returned home, discarding the bag containing Kira's pillow and clothes along the way. The next morning, he went to the gas station to withdraw cash from an ATM, knowing that after leaving Kira's car in the shopping center car park, he would need cash to pay for a taxi. After leaving Kira's car, Jeffrey went home and spent the day cleaning. He tried to make it look like Kira had driven away that morning and that nothing had happened. However, this plan was foiled by surveillance cameras. In October 2013, a jury convicted Jeffrey Trevino, 39. They accepted that his actions were not intentional and that they were the result of a heated after discovering that his wife was having an affair. Before the judge handed down his sentence, Kira's family spoke out. "This monster was a calculating criminal," said Carrie and Stager, Kira's sister. "He deserves no mercy." Kira's mother, Marcy, said Jeffrey showed no sympathy for her daughter. "He dumped my daughter like a piece of trash into the most polluted water in the country," she said. But her father, Jay, said, "No punishment can ever make up for the pain Jeffrey has caused our family. No amount of time for Jeffrey is enough, never enough," he said. In November 2013, Jeffrey Trevino was sentenced to 27.5 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2031. The case of Samadi Fonseca Fernandez. Samadi was born in Costa Rica in February 1975. Information about her family and childhood is limited. She grew up in the Cuban with her mother, Sonia Fonseca. From a young age, Samadi attended a local school and showed a complex personality. Samadi stood out for her beauty and knew how to take advantage of her appearance. However, due to her ambition and vanity, she put material and personal interests first, disappointing many people. She was also very jealous and aggressive when she was young. Thanks to her doll-like appearance, Samadi Fonseca worked for many years as a Barbie in a large bookstore of the Universal Company. The nickname Barbie stuck with her ever since. After graduating from high school, Samadi began a relationship with Osvaldo Fernando Baller, a successful journalist working for a local television station. Osvaldo was 16 years older than Samadi. This was Samadi's longest and most serious relationship, but Osvaldo never proposed to her. In 1996, they had a son, Christopher, and a year later, a daughter, Christina, was born. Due to scandals and jealousy, Samadi and Osvaldo divorced in 2012. In 2013, Osvaldo died at the age of 53 without leaving a will for Samadi. Not accepting this, Samadi decided to take matters into her own hands. She went to Osvaldo's old house, occupied it, and changed the locks to prevent his family and heirs from entering. In addition to seizing the property, Samadi also took some of Osvaldo's valuables. Osvaldo's family was extremely angry and immediately sued Samadi for theft. The police forced Samadi to leave the house, but no criminal proceedings were initiated against her. Samadi had several relationships, most notably with Miguel Angel Perez, with whom she had a third daughter, Maria. Some sources claim that they were married but divorced after a few years. However, other sources claim that Samadi was not married, simply gave her youngest daughter her lover's surname without his consent. Many strange events have been discovered. Some Barbie lovers have gone missing or died under mysterious circumstances. However, this has not been noticed for a long time. For example, one of Samadi's lovers went missing after breaking up with her. To this day, this person has not been found. Many suspect Samadi's involvement, but there is no concrete evidence. Another case is Diaco, also Samadi's former lover. He was murdered after breaking up with her. The case looked like a failed robbery. The perpetrator was never caught. Again, people suspected Samadi was involved, but there was no clear evidence. The most famous victim believed to be linked to Samadi was Gerardo Cruz. Gerardo Cruz, a Costa Rican native, was born in December 1992 in San Jose. He did not know his biological father because he left the family before he was born. Gerardo's mother, Ana Patricia, later married a man named Hermes Rodriguez. Hermes adopted Gerardo and loved him as his own son. A few years later, Gerardo had a younger sister named Milena. His childhood and youth were quite peaceful. He attended a normal school, loved motorbikes, and soon found true love with a girl named Carol. At the age of 23, Gerardo, his wife and 4-year-old daughter Genesis Cruz, moved to live with his aunt and uncle in the suburbs of San Sebastian. He worked at a local bakery to support his family. Gerardo and Carol was happy and were expecting a second child. In the summer of 2015, Gerardo met Samadi, a regular customer at the bakery. Samadi was 40 years old but still attractive, liked to dress provocatively and flirt with men. Notably, she started having affairs with much younger men, probably because she enjoyed the attention they received. Despite the age difference of nearly 20 years, Gerardo quickly became infatuated with this beautiful woman and began dating her secretly. She often came to the bakery, almost every day, to meet her young lover, attracting the attention of other employees. Samadhi was often accompanied by his eldest daughter Christina, who was 19 at the time. Initially, Gerardo skillfully balanced his family life with his secret meetings with his mistress. Both women were unaware of each other's existence. However, Gerardo gradually became careless and began telling his friends and colleagues about Samadhi, praising her as a great mistress and giving him gifts. Rumors of Gerardo's relationship soon reached his mother, who tried to convince her son to leave his mistress. However, Gerardo and Samadhi's relationship only lasted a few months and ended in October 2015, when Samadhi discovered that Gerardo had a pregnant wife and a young daughter. Samadhi was furious and began calling and texting Gerardo's wife, Carol, insulting her and threatening to kill Gerardo if he did not stay with her. Gerardo begged his wife for forgiveness and wanted to keep the family together. He did not take Samadhi's threat seriously, thinking that she would quickly cool down and find a new boyfriend. He did not expect how vengeful Samadhi would become. Just a few days after the breakup with Samadhi, while walking on a downtown street, Gerardo discovered an older man secretly filming up a young woman's. Gerardo was angry and decided to record the incident with his phone. He then approached the woman, explained the situation and advised her to call the police. Next, he chased the man for about 2 minutes trying to capture his face. Finally, the man fled in a taxi. That evening, Gerardo posted a video of the incident on his personal website. After just one night, the video went viral online. Netizens quickly identified the elderly man in the video as Luis Solmano Delgado, a former finance ministry official. The video quickly spread across media, turning Gerardo into a national celebrity. He was repeatedly invited to interviews in newspapers, on television and on radio to recount the incident, condemn the former official's actions and affirm that he had no regrets about what he had done. Meanwhile, a team of talented lawyers hired by Luis began to legally attack Gerardo. They accused him of violating the law by distributing the video and were preparing to sue him. Gerardo was surprised and confused by the situation, not knowing why he was being tried instead of the man who had committed a depraved act with an innocent girl. On October 7th, Gerardo gave his final interview on a local radio station. He was confident in his views and did not feel nervous. The next day, Gerardo planned to meet his friend Oswald after work, but canceled, citing an emergency. It was later revealed that Gerardo had received a text message from Samadhi that day. In the message, she had lured him to the park that evening with the promise of another interview. Gerardo trusted his ex-girlfriend completely and did not suspect anything. After work, he went to the meeting place, but instead of meeting the journalist, he was attacked by 2 strange men. They robbed him of his bag, beat him and stabbed him several times in the chest and stomach before running away. Before losing consciousness, Gerardo called his friend to tell him the news. The friend immediately called the police and an ambulance. Thanks to timely treatment, Gerardo was taken to the hospital. Doctors tried to save his life for 42 days. During this time, Gerardo underwent many surgeries, but ultimately did not survive. On November 19th, Gerardo passed away in the intensive care unit. Since Gerardo had just become famous before the tragedy, the news of his condition attracted national attention and was not exaggerated. Gerardo's family gave interviews, asking people to pray for his recovery. They did not understand why someone would attack Gerardo. Many people attended the funeral to express their condolences to the family. People hoped that the police would soon catch the culprit and give him a fair trial. There were initially many theories about the case. One theory was that it was a robbery murder because Gerardo was attacked in the park in the evening. His bag was stolen and he was stabbed with a knife. However, a few days before, Gerardo released a shocking video involving a famous former official, which could be related to the case. Therefore, the second theory was that it was a revenge murder. The media reported that Luis Solmano Delgado may have hired a hitman to kill the young man who had damaged his reputation. The case caused a heated debate in the press and people protested to demand the arrest of the culprit. The police began to investigate various theories and look for Gerardo's enemies. The investigation went dormant for months until May 2016, when a security camera video was discovered. The video showed two men running away from the crime scene. They immediately became prime suspects, but the police needed to identify and arrest them. The video became crucial evidence and, when released, helped move the investigation forward. The video was repeatedly shown on the news, urging viewers to look out for dangerous suspects. Police sketched the suspects and their physical features. Not long after, one suspect turned himself in and cooperated with the investigation, hoping for a reduced sentence. Thanks to his information, the investigation quickly identified other accomplices and the masterminds. All those involved were arrested, including Samadhi and his daughter Cristina, the masterminds Ronald Arce Barrientos, the taxi driver, Cesar Chavez Cerdas, who acted as an intermediary, Omar Costa, the young miner who directly participated in the attack and followed the victim. The roles and connections of the participants in the case were determined through phone calls and text messages. Samadhi was the mastermind who planned the entire incident in detail and recruited his daughter Cristina to participate. They asked their friends Ronald and Cesar to find an assassin to kill Gerardo, disguising it as a robbery in the park at night. Omar also participated with the task of ensuring that the victim arrived at the right location. Samadhi chose October 7th as the date of the murder. On that day, she contacted all the participants several times, assigning roles and ensuring that everyone followed the plan. The young woman also asked them to bring her some of her ex-lover's belongings as evidence after the crime. Gerardo, after finishing his shift, went straight to the park. He thought he was going to an interview, so he tried to arrive on time. However, at the meeting place, he was attacked and stabbed multiple times. The attacker took Gerardo's handbag and jacket, then gave these to the Samadhi as evidence. The most important evidence against Samadhi were text messages detailing the murder plan and the roles of each participant. She was so confident that she did not delete these messages. The motive for this serious crime was jealousy. She did not want to share her lover with his wife and decided that if she could not have him, no one could. She carefully planned and executed the criminal conspiracy with the help of her daughter. They were immediately arrested and denied bail due to concerns that they might flee the country. The other co-defendants were also detained before trial, except for Omar, the supervisor, and the youngest participant was handed over to the Juvenile Justice Department. The investigation lasted about a year and a half. It was not until December 2017 that the trial of all those involved in the criminal conspiracy began. Samadhi has a criminal record and was once arrested for falsifying documents to receive state benefits, but was only fined. She assigned the surname of a former lover to the child without his consent. She then used the court to receive child support from this man for more than 3 years, until the fraud was discovered. Samadhi was sentenced to 3 years in prison and fined a large sum. However, because she has a young child, her sentence was reduced to 5 years of suspended imprisonment. At the trial, the victim Gerardo's wife confirmed that she knew about her husband's relationship with Samadhi. She also said that Samadhi had threatened to kill Gerardo, but he was not too worried about these threats. The main motive for the case was Samadhi's jealousy and hurt, as she could not accept that her young lover wanted to stay with his wife. Through phone records, police discovered that Samadhi and her daughter Cristina had planned the crime together. After the security camera footage of the murders was released, Cristina had a mental breakdown. She called her mother in tears and wanted to turn herself in, but Samadhi reassured her that the investigation would never lead to them. The verdict was announced on January 23, 2018. The court sentenced Samadhi to 30 years in prison, Cristina to 25 years, Ronald to 25 years, and Cesar to 25 years. Of the killers, one was sent to a juvenile detention center, while another was still at large at the time. Omar, who had been stalking the victim, was acquitted. The victim's family received $140,000 in moral compensation. After the trial, they expressed their gratitude to the court for giving Gerardo's killers a fair sentence. Samadhi and Cristina's lawyers appealed to the Court of Appeals for a reduced sentence. The appeal hearing took place in November 2019. At the same time, Ronald. According to the testimony, Ronald participated in the massacre but did not know the details of the plan. Ronald and Caesar also appealed in hopes of having their sentences reduced. As a result, each participant in the crime had their sentence reduced by 5 years. Samadi is currently serving a 25-year sentence in a women's prison in Costa Rica. In the summer of 2020, she registered her marriage to a woman named Lindsay Diaz Lopez, whom she met in prison. At the time of the registration, Lindsay had been pardoned and released from prison, while Samadi still had to continue serving nearly 2 more decades of her sentence. Sarah Evelyn Isabel Payne was the third of 4 children. Her mom Sarah said she was the imagination of the family, all pixies and fairies and dolls. She was very much a girly girl. Around her family, she was full of energy, lively and playful. But Sarah said she could be quite timid with others. Sarah had a big heart, was kind, caring and considerate, loving nothing more than going to school and playing with her siblings. On the first weekend of July, the Payne family decided to visit Michael's father and stepmother, Leslie and Terry, in West Sussex. It was the peak of summer and they lived by the coast, with plenty of space outside for the kids to play. On the evening of July 1st, the family ate dinner together, before they took a walk down to the coastline. After this, the children, having so much fun, asked to stay out and play. Michael and Sarah put the oldest brother, Lee, in charge, and they went to play in the cornfield, just meters from their grandparents' house. Sarah, Michael, and Terry took a stroll themselves. They soon headed back home, wanting to settle in for the evening and get the children into bed. As soon as they approached the house, they realized something was wrong. 13-year-old Lee, 12-year-old Luke, and 6-year-old Charlotte were stood outside with Leslie, but Sarah was not. Leslie was clutching Charlotte's hand tightly, panicked, and asked, "Have you got Sarah?" "No," they tentatively said. The children said that Sarah had fallen over and hit her head while playing. She then ran off crying, heading for a gap in the harvest with the intent of going back to the house. Her oldest brother Lee turned around for a split second and lost sight of her. The children had looked for her for a few minutes before they knew they needed to get home. Everyone started running around the fields and beach, gathering neighbors along the way who wanted to help. As soon as the search started, it became clear that this was not simply a child that had run off and become lost. This was not in Sarah's nature, and everyone knew it. Codenamed Operation Napalm, everyone was invested and joining in the search, doing anything and everything they could to help. By all accounts, from everyone that lived there and knew the place, it was a very safe area. There was little traffic, lots of countryside, and all the houses were very separated, but everyone knew each other. One reporter said it was more a place where wealthy holidaymakers would rent out little seaside cottages. There was no trouble there. The last place she was seen had one road in and one road out. The reporter said, "You really have to have a reason to need to go down there." The police hit the ground running, and along with volunteers in the area, they started searching, but there was simply no evidence to be found. None of her clothing and nothing she dropped on the way. There were no leads and no clues anywhere. As the police started taking more detailed statements, Lee told his mother he had seen something, but didn't know if he should say or not. After encouraging him to tell her anything, no matter how small, he said that he had seen a white van on the road. He said the driver was a scruffy man, and he had smiled at him and waved as he had gone past. He remembered and watched the van speed off so fast, the tires were screeching against the ground. Lee said he was just seconds behind her, meters away. He gave a description of the van and the man inside. Authorities started going door to door and questioning known pedophiles in the area. Over the next 48 hours, 2 arrests were made. But both times they were swiftly released. Michael and Sarah were making every appeal they could, and every media outlet was running Sarah's story. Sarah was spearheading the media campaign, making sure everyone was talking about and looking for her daughter. She wouldn't hear any talk of her daughter being anything other than alive and well, and always addressed Sarah directly in the appeals, telling her she would be safe and back home soon. The picture of Sarah wearing her red school uniform became a famous and widely circulated picture, one many will remember seeing in the papers and on the news to this very day. But with nothing turning up, the military was soon brought in as well. Everyone was making appeals, including the pop group Steps, Sarah's favorite band. Reconstructions were put out, and before long, Sarah's case had become the biggest in Sussex police's history. After the appeals and reconstructions, thousands of leads came in, and every single one needed to be looked into. Someone believed they saw Sarah with a man at a service station getting fuel. The girl was in the toilets, crying and saying her name was Sarah. But this lead turned out to be false. Another witness said she had seen what looked like a white transit van come hurtling down the road that day, the same van that Lee described seeing that evening. This lead had a lot more weight to it. It was now more than 2 weeks since Sarah was last seen, and family liaison officers arrived at the family home with terrible news. The body of a little girl had been found by a farm worker. She was naked and buried in a shallow grave. Her body was severely decomposed and had been attacked by animals. As the liaison officer Sean was telling Michael and Sarah to prepare for the worst, the media was already publicizing the story, and Sarah's brother and sister came running outside, asking their parents if it was true. Testing confirmed it was Sarah Payne's body. Sean offered to go and see her first. When he returned to the house, Sarah said he was the shadow of the man who had left the house that day, and she said looking at how broken he was, she knew she couldn't face seeing her little girl like that. The pathologist said that Sarah had suffered a violent death and it was probably asphyxia in a sexually motivated attack. But due to the decomposition, it was impossible to determine any injuries. Crime Watch soon ran a story too. A lady came forward and told police that she had seen a shoe at the side of the road, near to where Sarah's body was found. This was the lead they were looking for. The shoe was collected and they started searching that area for more clues. Detectives circled back round to a man they had spoken to just a day after Sarah went missing. Convicted pedophile, 41-year-old Roy Whiting. Roy was described as a loner and an outcast. He had a string of past convictions and he had given them a false alibi. He had scratches to his body and answered no comment to everything he was asked. Roy Whiting was suspect number 1. Back in 1995, Roy had abducted and sexually assaulted an 8-year-old girl in Crawley. He was arrested and sentenced to 4 years in prison. A psychiatrist assessed him said that he was likely to reoffend once released and could possibly even kill his next victim. He was released after serving just half of his sentence, and in 1997, he became one of the first people in Britain to go on the newly launched sex offenders register. He moved to Littlehampton on the West Sussex coast and started renting a flat just miles from where Sarah was last seen. As he was on the sex offenders register and lived in the area, he was one of the first people to be questioned in Sarah's case. When the police went to his flat, he said he was out all day at a fair 21 miles away. His flat was forensically searched, but nothing turned up, and with this, the officers left. They did, however, keep him under surveillance over the next few weeks, monitoring everything he did and everywhere he went. At one point during the surveillance, police saw him get into a white van, a van they didn't know he owned. They asked him to step out and did a quick search. It turned out he had purchased the van just a week before Sarah was last seen. Inside, they found a receipt for fuel that was purchased on the day Sarah went missing, and this completely exposed his alibi. Other items in the van included children's blankets and toys. Sarah's body was discovered within 3 miles of the service station where Roy had bought the fuel and near to his flat, but there was still insufficient evidence to charge him. What had drawn police to Roy Whiting for a second time was that he had stolen a car and taken off. Police chased him at about 70 miles an hour before he crashed. He was arrested for theft and dangerous driving. This gave them more time to question him about Sarah again. Police believed that no matter how well he thought he had covered it all up, Roy Whiting was behind what had happened to Sarah Payne, but he still wasn't talking and was released pending his court date for the car theft. One of the officers leading the investigation said something about Sarah's abduction and death touched a nerve throughout the body of the United Kingdom. I think since that time there's been some really notable cases that have followed suit, but this was really the very first that was so enormous in the eyes of the public, he recalled. A funeral was finally held for Sarah. Sarah said when they buried her, they gave her the funeral a princess should have because she could never give her the wedding. Princess should have. Sarah said she owed it to the public and everyone that had been there supporting, searching and appealing since July. "It's very hard when the entire country has ownership of your daughter," she said. "You want to go away to a little corner and just mourn and deal with life." But knowing how much this meant to everyone else, many a mourner flocked to say goodbye to Sarah. Sarah and Michael believed early on that Sarah had been snatched and killed by a sex offender. Although they had no idea who, Sarah started channeling her energy into researching the laws on sex offenders, and they vowed that they would change the system. When the News of the World newspaper gave their backing too, they all started calling on law enforcement to adopt the British version of what is known as Megan's Law in America. This law would require police to make information about known local sex offenders available to the public. It would allow parents, carers, or guardians to formally ask the police for information about a person who has had contact with their child or a child close to them if they are concerned the person poses a risk. A decision was made to publish the names and faces of 50 pedophiles convicted of offenses against children in the News of the World. It was an extremely controversial decision. Critics accused the newspaper of inciting vigilante justice. There were many attacks off the back of this. But things got confused, and people that share the same names as those in the paper found themselves attacked. More than 1 million people signed the petition to make Sarah's law happen. In September 2000, 2 months after Sarah went missing, Roy Whiting pleaded guilty to stealing the car, and he was sentenced to 22 months in prison. 22 months gave police a substantial amount of time to forensically analyze as much as they could and build a good case against Roy. They started running tests on his van. The van was made to carry furniture and was full of plywood that went around the inside. The plywood was easy to strip out and burn, and it was clear that any evidence that may have been inside could be long gone. But the fear of not finding anything quickly dissipated when a single blonde hair was discovered on a red sweatshirt. It was a strand of Sarah's hair. The shoe found on the side of the road was soon confirmed to be Sarah's as well, and the Velcro strap on the shoe had picked up fibers that linked to the inside of the van as well. On the February 6, 2001, following 7 months of testing and gathering evidence, Roy Whiting was finally charged with the abduction and murder of Sarah Payne. Shockingly, he pled not guilty, and the family were faced with the pain of a trial that could end up presenting more evidence and facts than they ever wanted to hear. During the trial, Roy Whiting's previous convictions were withheld from the jury and media. Police worried that although absolutely relevant to Sarah's case, any knowledge of these convictions could jeopardize the outcome of the trial, and if he was convicted, Whiting could appeal, claiming he had been tried on the evidence of earlier crimes and not the ones linking to Sarah. But in December 2001, after a 4-week trial, Roy Whiting was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 50 years. After the trial was over, his previous convictions were laid bare, and the jury and media now knew the full truth. Michael and Sarah sadly announced their separation in September 2003. They both said that the stress and emotional turmoil brought on by what had happened to Sarah had put too much strain on their relationship. Sarah gave birth to another daughter shortly after this, giving them 4 surviving children together. All of Sarah and Michael's hard work with Sarah's law finally started to make tracks. It was trialed in 2008, and Sarah was awarded an MBE for her tireless efforts in making this happen. In 2009, just a week before Christmas, Sarah had a stroke brought on by a brain aneurysm. She underwent 2 brain operations in less than 2 days and was given a 50% chance of survival. She made it through it all and didn't ever slow down, continuing her campaigns after she recovered. She endured relentless abuse and harassment from online trolls, including a convicted pedophile, but she never once wavered. And Sarah's law, also known as the Child Sex Offender Disclosure Scheme, was finally extended across England and Wales. But another blow for the family came after Roy Whiting successfully appealed his sentence, and it was lowered to 40 years instead of 50. He is now eligible for release in 2041 and will be 82 years old. He is despised in prison and continues to face multiple attacks from other inmates. In 2010, a huge story hit the headlines. The News International phone hacking scandal involved the now-defunct News of the World and other British newspapers, owned by media tycoon Rupert Murdoch. Various employees of the newspaper were accused of engaging in phone hacking, police bribery, and exercising improper influence in the pursuit of stories. Thousands of people were targeted, and victims and their families, actors and performers, politicians and members of the royal family, sports stars, solicitors in high-profile cases, and high-ranking members of the police force, among many others. Almost 5,000 victims were identified. In 2002, Millie Dowler was abducted and killed by serial killer Levi Belfield. In 2011, Scotland Yard discovered Millie's voicemail had been accessed by journalists working for the News of the World, and the newspaper's private investigator, Glenmore Kerr, was also reported journalists had deleted some of her messages on the phone in order to free up space for new messages so they could obtain those as well. The deletions of the messages had actually led her family and police to believe she was still alive and active on her phone. They also deleted what could have been potential evidence. The Leveson Inquiry was a judicial public inquiry into the culture, practices, and ethics of the British press, and over the following years, a series of public hearings were held, and the truth about what had been happening over the years started to unravel. Many came forward to speak at the Leveson Inquiry, including Kate and Jerry McCann, Christopher Jeffries, who had been wrongly accused of the murder of Joanna Yates back in 2011, numerous powerful and public figures, and those accused of crimes. Sarah Payne was also amongst those told by Scotland Yard that there was evidence to suggest that she was targeted as well. She was given a phone by Rebekah Brooks so she could contact her supporters, and it is thought that this phone was hacked. Rebekah Brooks was the editor for the News of the World at the time. Sarah said if this was true, it was devastating and disappointing. But she said the News of the World had been a force for good in her daughter's case and helping with Sarah's law. Rebekah Brooks said, "The idea that anyone on the newspaper knew that Sarah or the campaign team were targeted by Mr. Mockhair is unthinkable. The idea of her being targeted is beyond my comprehension. It is imperative for Sarah and the other victims of crime that these allegations are investigated and that those culpable are brought to justice." Rebekah herself was soon charged with 5 different counts: conspiracy to hack voicemails, 2 counts of conspiracy to pay public officials, and 2 counts of conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. She was cleared of all charges in 2014 and resigned as the chief executive of News International, but was later reappointed CEO of the company, which is now named News UK. The phone hacking scandal brought down the News of the World and saw the resignation of a number of senior members of the Metropolitan Police Force, as well as many people working for the News of the World and News International. Rupert Murdoch resigned as News International's director, and his son James resigned as executive chairman. But those affected were undoubtedly left in incomparable positions and forever will be. Although she spoke of her upset at the affair, Sarah Payne contributed to the final issue of the News of the World. She said in part, she also said Rebekah was always in the foreground of the campaign. Payne family was soon struck with yet more heartbreak. Sarah's dad Michael sunk into severe depression and alcohol abuse after the loss of his daughter. He would have recurring nightmares and blamed himself every day for what happened to Sarah. Tragically, in 2014, Michael was found dead in his flat in Kent. He was just 45 years old. He spent his final days alone, drinking, telling everyone and anyone he spoke to. He should have been able to save his daughter that day. The coroner reported he had died of natural causes, and his father said, "We don't know exactly what he died of, but we think it was drink-related." Her siblings also bear an emotional burden. Sarah's family have always been determined that her death would not be in vain. Officers described Sarah as one of the most resilient and extraordinary women they had ever met, handling every second of the painful case with nothing but control, strength, and grace. She has gone on to win numerous awards for her work in child protection and became Britain's first ever Victims Commissioner. She was then academically acknowledged for her work in social engineering with an honorary doctorate, becoming Dr. Sarah Payne, MBE. I talk to her every day, always as an 8-year-old. She will always stay out forever. I can see through my other children what she would look like, and I have a good idea of what she would be like personality-wise, Sarah said. Letters to her has helped to make up, in a small way, for the teenage years and beyond that I didn't get with her. It has made her more real. I can hear her giggling. I can see her mischievous smile. For me, I want to always remember her as that lovely, sweet, 8-year-old girl. A statue stands in Sarah's old primary school in memory of her. It symbolizes childhood, happiness, and innocence. a beautiful and fitting tribute that reflects the happy, loving, and kind-hearted little girl that Sarah Payne was. Her family work hard to make sure Sarah will never be forgotten, and the hope is always that Sarah's lore will continue to help protect children and their families for many years to come. The case of Pam Hupp. Pam Hupp was born on October 20th, 1958 in Delwood, Missouri, as the second child of the Newman family. She married Mark Hupp and they had 2 children together. In 2001, the family moved to Fallon, Missouri. Pam had a varied work history, including a job as a life administrator at State Farm until 2010, when she stopped working due to disability claims related to leg and back pain. Despite some past legal issues, including 2 charges of forgery, Pam's acquaintances would never have suspected her of being capable of murder. However, on August 16, 2016, Pam shot and killed Louis Gumpenberger, a mentally challenged man who had been struggling with physical and mental disabilities since a 2005 car accident. Pam claimed that Louis had attacked her with a knife after jumping out of a passing vehicle, and that she had defended herself by slapping the knife away and then shooting him 5 times with her Ruger LCR, which she retrieved from her nightstand. However, this account of events seems suspicious, and it is uncertain what really happened that day. Pam accused Louis of instructing her to drive him to the bank to withdraw money belonging to Russ Verrier, a man wrongly convicted of murdering his wife Betsy in 2011. According to Pam, Louis became agitated and excited, saying, "We're going to the bank, we're getting Russ money." However, evidence later revealed that Louis's true intention was to have Louis Gumpenberger attack and kill Pam. A handwritten note found at the crime scene contained instructions for Gumpenberger. First, he was to obtain Russ money from Pam's apartment. Next, he was to kill Pam and make it look like Russ' wife was responsible. The note included gruesome details, such as ensuring the knife was left sticking out of Pam's neck. The perpetrator was willing to pay Gumpenberger a large sum of money for carrying out this heinous act. Pam Hupp was arrested for the murder of Lou Gumpenberger. However, a question arose. Was Gumpenberger a hired assassin, or did Pam manipulate him, using a mentally disabled man as a scapegoat? The truth began to unravel when Pam went to the O'Fallon Police Department voluntarily. During her interview, Pam asked if it would be recorded, mentioning that she normally appeared with Chris Hayes, a KTVI news reporter. She even blamed Hayes for attracting criminals through his reporting. Pam had a history of pretending to be Kathy, a producer of an NBC TV show. According to the O'Fallon police chief and the St. Charles County prosecutor, Pam used this persona to lure Gumpenberger into her home, where she tricked him into recreating a 911 call, providing a cover for the brutal crime she was about to commit. After killing Gumpenberger, Pam Hupp planted evidence to incriminate herself, including writing a note found on his body. The police had a strong case against her due to the overwhelming evidence they uncovered. They found $9 bills on Gumpenberger's body, which Pam had placed there. The 10th $9 bill was later discovered in her dresser, and its serial number matched 3 of the $100 bills also found on Gumpenberger. Pam Hupp was arrested on August 23, 2016, and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. When she requested to use the restroom on the day of her arrest, she attempted to commit suicide by stabbing her wrist and neck with a ballpoint pen. Fortunately, she did not succeed. On January 30, 2017, Pam appeared in court for the first time. The prosecutor, Phil Groyne, argued that her actions demonstrated a consciousness of guilt. A grand jury convicted her of all charges. In December 2016, her bail was set at $2 million. Pam's trial began in 2017, during which she pleaded not guilty, prompting the prosecutor to pursue the death penalty. The prosecutor's reasoning was that Pam had seemingly chosen her victim, Gumpenberger, at random. In June 2019, Pam entered an Alford plea, which allowed her to plead guilty while maintaining her innocence. This move nullified the death penalty charge and led to a jury trial being canceled. As a result, Pam was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole in August 2019. Following her sentencing, she called her then-husband Matt Hupp and explained that she had confessed to killing Louis Gumpenberger to avoid putting their family through a lengthy and distressing trial. During the trial, disturbing facts about Pam's past came to light, shocking the police, judges, and the public. In June 2016, Judge Cunningham ruled that evidence related to the brutal murder of Betsy Ferrier could be presented in court. This ruling led to the reopening of the Betsy Ferrier case. Betsy, born Elizabeth Ferrier, worked with Pam at State Farm as a life insurance administrator and lived in Troy, Missouri with her husband Russ Ferrier and 2 daughters from a previous relationship. Betsy was diagnosed with cancer in 2010. In October 2011, she discovered that the cancer had spread to her liver and she only had a few months left to live. Sadly, she passed away on December 22, 2011. Before her death, Betsy changed the beneficiary of her $150,000 life insurance policy from her husband to Pam Hoff, without informing her husband or daughters. Pam claimed that Betsy had instructed her to set up a trust fund for her daughters, but later alleged that Betsy wanted her to keep the money because they had a romantic relationship. Betsy's daughters took Pam to court in 2014, trying to reclaim their mother's life insurance fund. However, their case was dismissed in 2016. In the same year, Russ, Betsy's husband, sued State Farm. On December 27, 2011, just 5 days after making Pam the beneficiary of her life insurance policy, Betsy attended a chemotherapy session at the Alvin J. Sitman Cancer Center. Weakened from the treatment, she went to her mother's house, where it was agreed that Russ would pick her up or she would stay overnight. However, Pam unexpectedly showed up and insisted on driving Betsy home. Claiming to have dropped her off around 7 p.m., Betsy's daughter reported that her mother didn't answer her call at around 7:21 p.m. Later, at 9:40 p.m., Russ, Betsy's husband, desperately called 911 to report that his wife had taken her own life. However, Russ had been at his friend Michael Corbin's house, watching movies from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Afterward, he drove to Arby's Lake in St. Louis before returning home. When the emergency responders arrived about 10 minutes after Russ' call, they quickly realized that Betsy's death was not a suicide. Her body was found lying on her right side, with 55 stab wounds and a deep cut on her wrist. Kitchen knife was lodged in her neck, and another knife was discovered under her pillow. Notably, there were no blood stains or footprints around the entrance of the house. The investigation determined that Betsy died between 7:20 p.m. and 9:41 p.m. Suspicion immediately fell on Russ Ferrier, who became the prime suspect. The authorities believed he had a motive, as his wife had refused to give him access to $150,000. Russ was arrested and charged with his wife's murder, while the real killer remained at large. Russ Ferrier was arrested the day after Betsy's death. He became the prime suspect due to his 911 call, in which he claimed her death was a suicide. However, a glance at the body immediately ruled out this possibility. Additionally, a pair of blood-stained slippers were discovered in his closet, incriminating evidence against him. Russ was subsequently charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action in court in January 2012, just a day after his wife's funeral. The investigation revealed more damning evidence against Russ. He performed poorly on a polygraph test, leading police to regard his behavior as suspicious and erratic. Furthermore, at Pam's request, the police searched Betsy's laptop and found a disturbing Word document, in which she expressed her fear of losing her life at the hands of her husband. Russ was held on a $250,000 bail, which he couldn't afford, so he was kept in county jail until his trial on November 18, 2013. During police questioning, Pam revealed that Russ had a history of violence, heavy drinking, and had previously threatened Betsy, making it easy to suspect him of the murder. The prosecution argued that Russ had a strong motive to kill his wife. She had received a large sum of $150,000 for her friend, bypassing him in the process. According to Judge Christina Menem, this motive was enough to implicate Russ. At the trial, Russ' lawyer, Joel Schwartz, defended his client's innocence. Schwartz claimed that Russ had spent most of the night with friends, who corroborated his alibi. Additionally, Russ had purchased food at a store that evening, which made it physically impossible for him to stab his wife 55 times within the given time frame. Furthermore, There were no blood stains on his clothes or body. The prosecutor counted that Russ' friends might have been involved in the crime and had lied about his whereabouts that night. The prosecutor suggested that Russ' friends had accompanied him to buy food at ABY and stage an alibi. The presiding judge, Christina Menem, refused to allow Joel Schwartz to present crucial evidence that implicated Pam as an alternative suspect. This evidence included phone records showing Pam was still near Betsy's apartment, 30 minutes after she claimed to have left, as well as the fact that Betsy had made Perry a $150,000 life insurance policy just 5 days before her death. Despite Pam having a clear motive, the judge chose to ignore it. In a closed hearing, Pam claimed to have put $100,000 of the insurance money into a trust fund for Betsy's daughters. However, in a later civil deposition, she admitted to keeping the money for herself, stating that she didn't want her daughters, mother, or sisters to have it. Meanwhile, Detective Mike Merkel of the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office reported that a crime scene camera had malfunctioned, resulting in important photographs being unable to be developed. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Russ was convicted of first-degree murder and armed criminal action in November 2013. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for 30 years. Before Farrer's second trial, Attorney Schwartz finally obtained the photos that showed no blood trail. "Sent me those photos, but I've been unsuccessful." Fox 2 News was present in the courtroom when Schwartz dramatically revealed that he had uncovered evidence that police and prosecutors had been hiding. After this, was transferred to the Jefferson City Correctional Center, a welcome development for Pam's sister Betsy. During the trial, Russ' wife testified that he had once pressed a pillow against her face, whispering, "This is what it feels like to die," because she had removed him from her insurance policy. Schwartz pointed out that this story originally came from Pam, but the judge ignored this. Throughout the trial, Russ's friends were falsely accused of being accessories to murder, thanks to the prosecutor's closing speech. Fortunately, no charges were brought against them, even though Russ spent nearly 4 years in prison. In February 2015, attorney Joel Schwartz appealed Russ' conviction. However, back in 2013, Judge Christina Menem had already rejected Schwartz's request to review the case. In 2014, KTVI and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch revisited the case, uncovering some suspicious facts about Betsy's death and her true killer. Their investigation found that Pam Hupp had given contradictory statements to the police, including a false claim that she had left the Faria residence immediately after dropping Betsy off. The Faria murder case was marred by controversy and deceit. A police officer recalled being shocked that nobody suspected Pam, with everyone focusing on Russ instead. A 911 operator testified that Russ seemed genuinely shocked and agitated during their call. However, 2 jurors revealed that crucial information had been withheld from them, raising questions about why the sheriff's department would deliberately hide evidence that favored Russ. The media uncovered a disturbing web of relationships between the prosecuting attorney, ASI, and key figures in the case, including the captain of investigations and a lead investigator. This information led to Russ' retrial in February 2015. The Missouri Court of Appeal transferred the case back to the 45th Circuit Court, where a new judge, Stephen R., took over. He granted a new bench trial due to new evidence and released Russ on bond pending the trial. During the retrial, Russ was allowed to present incriminating evidence against Pam. Some police officers admitted that Pam had told them she saw Russ with another man in a car while she was dropping off Betsy. The CSI agent who handled the crime scene believed that Russ' blood-stained slippers were a setup, and that the blood stain was not from stepping in blood. Russ was acquitted of all charges and released on November 7, 2015. He later filed a lawsuit against ASI and 3 deputy sheriffs for ignoring exonerating evidence and fabricating evidence. In 2020, he was awarded a $2 million settlement. The case also led to repercussions for the officials involved. ASI faced a bar complaint, although it was rejected. She later announced that she was willing to cooperate with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Lincoln County Commissioner to review her conduct. Judge Christina Menem was suspended for misconduct in a different case and was voted out of office in 2018 for her role in the Farrier murder case. In 2019, Lincoln County appointed a new attorney, Mike Wood, who reopened the Betsy Ferrier murder case. He confessed that the wrongful conviction of Russ had inspired him to take the job. Pam was eventually interrogated as a suspect in the murder and was charged with first-degree murder. The new prosecutor would sought the death penalty due to the heinousness of the crime. Betsy Ferrier was brutally murdered, stabbed 55 times, and her wrist was almost completely severed. Detective Mike would condemn the act as animalistic and charged Pam Hupp with the crime. Wood had strong evidence against Pam, including a $150,000 life insurance policy that named her as the beneficiary just days before Betsy's death. Pam had promised to put the money in a trust fund for Betsy's daughter, but instead kept it for herself, claiming that Betsy had wanted her to have it. In an interview, Pam claimed that she and Betsy were lovers, but Wood believed she was lying. Pam had also loaned her son $120,000 from her company in 2021, contradicting her earlier claims. Wood was convinced that Pam murdered Betsy by stabbing her with a kitchen knife while she slept on the sofa. He believed Pam tried to make it look like a domestic violence incident by walking around the room with socks on. The evidence against Pam included a text message she sent to Betsy's phone at 7:20 p.m. claiming she was home, but her call records showed she was still at the Faria residence. The fact that Betsy was found lying on her side suggested to Wood that she was killed by someone she trusted. Pam pleaded not guilty of the crime, but her trial was delayed multiple times due to her attorney's death and other issues. Finally, in 2023, the trial was scheduled to start in 2025. Wood was not only determined to bring Pam to justice, but also criticized the Lincoln County prosecutors for mismanaging the case and showing bias against Russ Faria, Betsy's husband. He pointed out a 2015 destruction order that could have led to the destruction of evidence, which would have made it impossible for Russ to be released from prison. The case of Carrie Leah Farver. Carrie Leah Farver was born on November 30th, 1974 in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. As a single mother, she raised her son, Max Maxwell, after experiencing failed relationships in the past. Raising Max was challenging for Carrie. Despite her immense love for her child, she struggled with depression, which led to a period where she spent a month in bed. During this time, her mother, Nancy Rainey, took care of Max. Carrie's difficult relationship with Max's father and unstable living conditions contributed to her mental health issues. At the age of 20, Carrie's struggles led to a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. This condition causes extreme mood swings ranging from euphoria, increased productivity, and excessive friendliness to depression, bitterness, and feelings of powerlessness. Although bipolar disorder significantly complicates daily life, Carrie's doctor found an effective treatment for her in the early 2000s. With this treatment, Carrie was able to manage her condition and live a relatively normal life. Whether Carrie wanted to settle her personal life is an open question. On one hand, what woman doesn't dream of a suitable partner? On the other hand, why commit to someone who might bring worries and misfortunes? Carrie was raised in a loving family and had an active lifestyle. She played sports and aspired to become a doctor. However, her dreams were cut short during her first medical practice when she fainted at the sight of blood. Deciding not to risk her health or her patients, she pursued a career in programming instead. In the fall of 2012, Carrie received a job offer in Omaha with good prospects and decided to take it. However, her son Max was in middle school and preferred to stay in his familiar surroundings, so he remained with his grandmother in Macedonia. According to Amy, a friend of Carrie's father, Carrie had a radiant smile that drew attention whenever she entered a room. It was likely this quality that caught Dave Kropa's eye when they met at an auto repair shop in November 2012. As Carrie showed him something inside her car, a Ford Explorer, Dave felt an instant attraction. Their first date arrived soon after, but their time together was interrupted by numerous calls and messages from a woman named Liz, who eventually stopped by Dave's apartment to collect something she had left there earlier. Dave told Carrie about his past relationship with Liz, whom he met on a dating site 6 months prior. They had been together for a while, but he ended things because she was extremely clingy. Carrie was understanding and wasn't fazed by Liz's presence in Dave's apartment, recognizing that everyone has past relationships that can resurface. 2 weeks after moving in, Carrie started dating Dave. They had discussed their expectations beforehand and agreed to a brief, casual affair. Liz, whose full name is Shawnanna Elizabeth Govlier, was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Dave and Liz had children around the same age. However, Dave felt Liz wasn't a suitable long-term partner due to her limited education and lack of shared interests. Their relationship focused more on physical intimacy than meaningful conversations. Over time, Liz grew increasingly interested in what Dave was doing when she wasn't around, particularly in regards to who he was seeing. However, Dave consistently reminded her that they were in an open relationship, implying that she shouldn't be concerned about his interactions with others. He also reassured her that she had the freedom to date other men if she chose to do so. Despite Dave's openness, Liz couldn't shake off her feelings of dissatisfaction and jealousy, particularly towards Dave's children and their mother, Amy. She struggled to understand the close bond that persisted between Dave and Amy even after their breakup. As a result, Liz's behavior became increasingly possessive, prompting Dave to create distance between them. It was during this period of separation that Carrie entered Dave's life. Carrie was not only beautiful, but also stylish, intelligent, and a great conversationalist. Dave found himself lost in conversation with her for hours, feeling an undeniable connection as they shared common interests and perspectives. Liz noticed that Dave was becoming increasingly distant, so she tried to rekindle their connection by sending messages, emails, and making phone calls. However, he had no intention of stopping his interactions with Carrie or anyone else for her sake. Meanwhile, Carrie and Dave were spending more nights together, which was convenient for Carrie's work schedule and enjoyable for Dave. Carrie seemed to be taking things lightly, focusing on having fun and not looking for anything serious. In December 2015, Liz was shot and non-fatally wounded, leading her to suspect who might be responsible and realize she needed to take action. 2 years prior, on November 13, 2012, Carrie had kissed Dave goodbye before he left for work, expecting to see him later. However, that would be the last time they saw each other. At 9:45 a.m. that morning, Dave received a surprising text message from Carrie stating she wanted to move in with him permanently. Dave found this message disconcerting as they had previously discussed and agreed not to rush into a relationship, being happy with their current situation. Dave replied that he wasn't ready for such a change, but Carrie's response was unpleasant and filled with profanity. He was shocked to discover that all of Carrie's belongings were gone from the apartment. This led him to believe she had left him for good. That same day, Carrie also removed him as a friend on Facebook, which seemed like the end of the matter. However, Dave started getting multiple rude texts and emails from Carrie daily, containing curses and threats to ruin his life. Carrie sent a large number of these messages, all of which were aggressive. Uncharacteristically, she also stopped showing up for work, despite being known for her punctuality. Strange messages weren't only sent to Dave, but also to her mother and 15-year-old son, Max. She claimed to have found a job in Kansas and planned to take Max with her, but wanted to be alone for the time being due to worries over her failed romance. In May 2013, Carrie posted on Facebook that she'd left of her own free will and was tired of criticism. She wasn't missing her old life but wasn't ready to return home. Carrie asserted her independence as a grown woman, stating that she had the right to leave home if she chose to. She apologized for hurting everyone by leaving abruptly. However, as time passed, Carrie failed to reappear. Her mother became increasingly concerned when Carrie missed important family events, including her own birthday, Max's birthday, and other celebrations. The final indication that something was seriously wrong was when Carrie missed her father's funeral. Liz began receiving messages from Carrie, which were insulting, humiliating, and even threatening. Carrie warned Liz to stay away from Dave. Confused by Carrie's behavior, Liz reached out to Dave, who revealed he was facing a similar situation. Carrie was sending him messages and emails, accusing him of wrongdoing, calling him a liar, and vowing revenge for the pain he allegedly caused her. The messages were sometimes ominous, with Carrie claiming to know what Dave was doing at the moment. The shared experience brought Dave and Liz closer together, but also made Dave feel guiltier about the trouble he had caused. The messages from Carrie grew more menacing and were filled with grammatical errors and illogical content. This was unusual, as Carrie's mother claimed that her daughter had always been a calm person who wrote coherent and well-structured letters and documents. Carrie was known to be meticulous about spelling and writing style. It's possible that she had experienced even more severe mental health issues. Her actions seemed to be driven solely by her uncontrolled mental state. A key indicator of dissociative identity disorder, also known as split personality, is the presence of separate, simultaneous self-consciousness in each ego, each with its own distinct memories, thoughts, behaviors, and inclinations towards specific actions. This might explain Carrie's unusual behavior and altered writing style. Everything suggested she was unstable, which is why the police didn't initially consider her missing, instead focusing on stopping the pursuit of Liz and Dave. They tried to track Carrie's cell phone, but it was unsuccessful due to blocked signals. Meanwhile, Liz and Dave continued to receive hundreds of texts and emails, sometimes simultaneously receiving nasty messages when they were together. Dave and Liz continued dating, but he felt uneasy around her as she became increasingly demanding. Despite claiming to be fine with their no-commitment relationship, Liz's behavior suggested otherwise. Every time Dave tried to end things with Liz, Carrie would start texting him, bonding with him over their shared victimization. This common ground drew Dave and Carrie closer together, causing them to reunite repeatedly. In January 2013, a missing car was surprisingly found in Dave's front yard. However, the fingerprints on the steering wheel didn't match Carrie's, and the car showed no suspicious signs. The police eventually returned the car to Carrie's parents. Carrie continued to message Liz and Dave, escalating her behavior by sending pictures of their children and threatening to harm them unless Dave left Liz alone. As time passed, Carrie's stalking persisted, and Liz's jealousy grew, frustrating Dave. He became exhausted with the events unfolding in his life and eventually found the strength to end his relationship with Liz. This decision came shortly after a tragic incident in August 2013 when Liz reported a fire at her home that resulted in the death of all her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz suspected Carrie was responsible, citing repeated threats made via texts and emails. The incident marked a significant turning point in the case of missing person Carrie Farver, leading to Carrie's placement on a federal wanted list. Tens of thousands of messages were meticulously analyzed. Law enforcement seized cell phones from Dave and Liz, as they believed Dave was also in danger. Someone had vandalized the auto repair shop where he worked and thrown a brick through his window. It appeared that Carrie's anger was directed at anyone in Dave's life. Consequently, Amy Flora, Fave's ex-wife, began receiving threatening messages from Carrie. As Dave spent time with his children, he also saw Amy regularly. The police were perplexed as to why Carrie, who had dated Dave for less than 2 weeks, was now stalking Dave and his ex-wife. The investigators decided to focus on Dave Kuppa, as Carrie's disappearance raised many questions that needed to be answered. It was a mystery that didn't add up. Carrie Farver's family was also tirelessly searching for her, exploring every possible lead to find her. Their efforts finally paid off in the spring of 2015 when detectives Ryan Avis and Jim Doty took on the case. Unfortunately, they found no evidence that Carrie was still alive. One of the detectives shared their thoughts with ABC News. It's unusual for adults to suddenly leave without using any money. No one saw or heard from her, which doesn't make sense. She had a good income and a nice home. I've come to believe that I have no proof she's alive. With the help of a digital forensics expert, the detectives analyzed data from Kropa and Gore's phones from 2013. Kawa discovered that Carrie had sent over 50,000 texts and 15,000 emails to Dave in just 3 years. Whoever was impersonating Carrie became increasingly sophisticated, trying to hide their IP address and true identity. Somebody with expertise in computer programs seemed to be behind the strange occurrences. In December 2015, Liz Gart contacted the police again, this time reporting that she had been shot in the leg on her own doorstep. She claimed her attacker was Amy Flora, not Carrie. Coincidentally, Dave was missing a gun that Amy may have had access to. This new development raised suspicions that Amy might be involved in Carrie's disappearance. The investigation uncovered a lead that suggested Amy's motive. She may have been seeking revenge against women connected to Dave Kraut. Amy's relationship with Dave had been complicated, and the presence of other women in his life might have prevented them from reuniting. The police promptly questioned Amy, but surprisingly, she had a solid alibi. Multiple witnesses confirmed that she was not at Liza's house when the shooting occurred, so no arrest was made. The investigation became increasingly puzzling. New details emerged from the analysis of Liza's cell phone data. Investigators found fake email addresses using variations of Farver's name and an app used to schedule messages. This discovery shed light on how Liz and Dave received simultaneous messages from Carrie. The investigation led to suspicion of Liz Govlier, which intensified when her fingerprint matched those on Carrie's car steering wheel. It was now clear who the culprit was, and the priority was to prevent further harm. To catch Liz off guard, detectives devised a plan to create a fake narrative, pretending to still consider Amy the prime suspect, aiming to prevent Liz from escaping or destroying evidence. Liz fell for the trap. She was thrilled at the opportunity to eliminate another rival who was threatening her relationship with Dave. Soon after, Liz Govlier gave the police an email supposedly written by Amy. The email included a confession to kidnapping Carrie, along with specific details about the crime. According to the confession, Carrie had been stabbed in the stomach or chest area before her body was disposed of. The email also revealed information about Carrie's car and home that had not been publicly disclosed. According to an investigative spokeswoman, Liz provided detectives with information that only someone intimately involved in the crime could have known. In doing so, she inadvertently implicated herself in Carrie Farver's murder. The letter made it clear that the crime occurred in a car, prompting authorities to re-examine the victim's vehicle. Upon removing the seat covers and fabric, specialists discovered a blood stain belonging to Carrie Farver. Liz managed to send messages posing as Carrie without arousing suspicion, but it's unclear how. Reports suggest that Liz Govlier led a double life, dating both Dave and a man named Garrett. Notably, Garrett's IP address was linked to messages sent under Carrie's name. When questioned, Garrett revealed that he had been in a long-term relationship with Liz. Out of kindness, Garrett invited Liz to move in with him and his children after a fire. However, their relationship became complicated and deteriorated significantly once they started living together. Garrett would often take care of Liz's children while she isolated herself in her room or left the house. Garrett was shocked by what the police told him. It was discovered that Liz spent 40 to 50 hours a week pretending to be a missing woman. Although her room was messy, no significant evidence was found. However, investigators did discover several cell phones and electronic devices in the last place she stayed. In late December 2016, Shawnanna Liz was charged with first-degree murder. The county prosecutor commented on the complexity of the investigation, stating that most murders are dark, but this crime was particularly bizarre. It would take some convincing to make someone believe it actually happened. Liz's actions, including letting her dog die in a fire she set herself and shooting herself in the thigh, were attempts to deflect suspicion from herself. Liz's attorney, James Martin Davis, believed the case against her was weak, since it was largely based on circumstantial evidence. Key pieces of evidence were missing, including Carrie's body in the crime weapon, and Liz had not confessed to the crime. In fact, there was no conclusive proof that Carrie was even dead. The defense team requested a mistrial, which would allow a judge to determine the extent of Shawnanna's guilt. The prosecution presented a substantial amount of complex electronic evidence, as well as physical evidence. They argued that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie's car supported the theory that she had been stabbed. Investigators also found a direct link between Shawnanna and Carrie's murder by analyzing a memory card that Shawnanna had used around the time Carrie went missing. The memory card, which was found in a tablet stored at Dave's residence, contained deleted images. It was clear that the foot belonged to a people who had been deceased for several years. Notably, Carrie had a similar tattoo among her distinguishing features. Her mother later confirmed that the tattoo indeed belonged to Carrie. The photo solidified the conviction of Shawnanna Liz was predator. The judge ruled her guilty of first-degree murder and handed down a life sentence without parole, stating that Carrie Farver did not disappear by choice but was tragically murdered. Authorities suspect that Sean Anna murdered Carrie, allowed her body to decompose, and then burned the remains to eliminate all evidence. Motivated by jealousy, she decided to eliminate her rival. After disposing of Carrie, Sean Anna took her cell phone and used it to send messages that would make Farver appear unstable and win back Dave's favor. When this plan succeeded, Sean Anna wanted to eliminate Amy as well, but she became too entangled in her own scheme and ultimately fell into her own trap. Sean Anna, also known as Liz, was also found guilty of arson for setting fire to her own home in August 2013 and attempting to blame it on Carrie. The fire destroyed the house and killed pets, resulting in an additional 20-year prison sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women, despite maintaining her innocence. Dave revealed that he received thousands of emails and text messages signed by Carrie over the years. However, he claimed that he never noticed Carrie stalking him during their relationship, which contrasts with his experience with Sean Anna. So what happened to Carrie's son, Maxwell Farver? According to his LinkedIn profile, he followed in his mother's footsteps and became a computer programmer. He graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering data science and is now married. Although it's unlikely he's forgotten the past, he may have found some peace with his new family. As for Dave Kropa, he now lives a private life away from the public eye. He doesn't have a public account on any social media platform. This disturbing crime story is a harsh reminder of the complexities and manipulation that can occur in human relationships. It highlights how vulnerable we can be in our own surroundings, unaware of the true nature of those around us. On September 4th, 2012, at 5:35 p.m., Yonkers Police Department officers responded to a 911 call regarding a suspicious package discovered in the woods. First responders discovered a decomposing human body wrapped in a large black garbage bag when they arrived at the scene. After taking over the investigation, detectives from the department's Major Case Squad and Crime Scene Unit identified the victim as 26-year-old Pamela Graddick, a resident of the Bronx. In an effort to hide the crime, Pamela's killer had shot her twice in the head outside of Yonkers, according to investigators, and then dumped her in the woods. Early in the investigation, Wanda Verhila was marked as a person of interest by the police. She was Pamela's girlfriend and they shared an apartment together. Wanda Verhila informed Pamela's family 1 month prior to her body being discovered on August 13, 2012, that although Pamela had vanished over the weekend, the things she was supposed to have taken with her remained in their apartment. Pamela's family reported her missing to New York City police when they discovered she hadn't shown up for work either. According to the investigators, the smaller Wanda Vigila could not have moved the larger Pamela's body from their apartment to the isolated spot in the woods. After a 2-year investigation, the case was turned over to the Yonkers Police Department Cold Case Unit because the investigators were unable to find enough evidence to bring charges upon anyone. In January 2022, Wanda Vigila, who was then 41 years old, was interviewed by investigators. In the course of the interview, Vigila admitted to killing Pamela. She claimed that because of their continuous domestic problems, she had shot Pamela inside their shared Bronx apartment. She claimed that John Torres gave her the weapon. Additionally, she had also moved the body from their apartment to the woods with Torres' assistance. Wanda Vigila and John Torres were both placed under arrest in March of 2022. Torres was accused of hindering and tampering with physical evidence, first-degree prosecution, second-degree criminal facilitation, and other felonies. After the arrests, City of Yonkers Police Commissioner John J. Mueller issued a statement in which he said, "The passage of time only reinforces our commitment to solving these heinous crimes. The Yonkers Police prides itself on focusing on victims and their families and doing whatever we can to deliver justice for them. I hope that these arrests bring some degree of closure to Pamela's family and friends, and I applaud the extraordinary efforts of our cold case detectives in closing out this case after so many years. Well done." Wanda Vigila was given a 20-year to life sentence in June 2023 for killing Pamela Graddick. In court, Tawana McClellan, Pamela's sister, said, "You took my sister from me. You took my sister from all of us, and I hope that burns in your soul. In 2002, 23-year-old Cheryl Taylor lived in Weldon, North Carolina. She was married to John Olsby, her high school sweetheart. They had a 7-year-old daughter named Justice. On the morning of August 16, 2002, Justice woke up and realized that Cheryl had not woken her up in time for the school bus and she missed it. She went to her mom's bedroom, and it was there that she discovered that someone had taken Cheryl's life. An autopsy showed that she had been strangled and presumably assaulted. It was not made public if there were signs of forced entry or if investigators were able to collect forensic evidence from the crime scene that belonged to the perpetrator. Despite an extensive investigation by authorities, no arrests were made and the case went cold. Justice and John grieved together for 17 more years. Tragically again, by December 2019, after going missing, John Osby was found fatally shot and rolled up in a blanket near Sycamore Street in Weldon. Investigators were unable to track down the person that shot him, and for years the family was left wondering if they would ever get answers to what happened to John and Cheryl Taylor. That changed when Sheriff Tyree Davis hired Detective Sergeant Rich Summergy as Halifax County's dedicated cold case investigator in January 2023. His job was to pore over the office's unsolved cold cases, looking for anything that investigators may have missed in the past, and using new technology to find clues that were out of reach before. Detective Rich Summergy first looked into John Osby's case, before realizing Cheryl's life had been taken by someone years earlier. He identified the person responsible for what happened to Cheryl. Finally, on July 21, 2023, 46-year-old Lewis Turner Jr. was arrested and charged with taking Cheryl Taylor's life. He was living in Northampton County, North Carolina. It is not known yet if he is responsible for shooting John Osby. It was revealed that Turner was a friend of Cheryl and her family back in 2002 when he took her life. Turner was 25 years old when the crime took place. He has 2 other criminal charges on his record: assaults from when he was a teen. In both of those cases, he got probation. After being arrested and charged with voluntary manslaughter, Turner was held at the Halifax County Jail under $250,000 bond. Scott Hall, patrol captain of the Halifax County Sheriff's Office, outlined the reasoning behind the voluntary manslaughter charge. This was not a premeditated crime with malice. Based on the facts of the case and elements of the crime, we charged accordingly. Sheriff Tyree Davis remarked how he cried tears of joy at being able to arrest a suspect in connection with Cheryl's case. I received the call that we were able to solve one of our cold cases. A cold case from over 20 years ago. No one knew about this information and we could not say anything until we notified the family first. However, I was instantly overcome with emotion and tears started to flow. As a member of the state commission, I was sitting up front with the other board members and I tried to hold things together. I did so just by wiping the tears away. But once I started sniffling, I knew I needed to leave the room. Folks, I can tell you that these tears were tears of joy. These were tears of excitement. Excitement not only for Taylor's family, but also excitement for her friends, co-workers, schoolmates, and anyone that she had ever crossed paths with. I was excited for the community because this is a beacon of hope for all those families that need closure too. Cheryl's daughter, Justice Osby, had this to say after the arrest. Unbelievable. We never knew this day was coming. Justice said she is grateful to everyone who helped bring Turner to justice, and she is glad that she can finally have some closure. She said, "I am just so thankful for everyone that participated and helped me get closure for my family, because today is a good day. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries." Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.